The body was discovered on a Tuesday morning, November 7, 2023, in a luxury penthouse apartment in Istanbul's Sicily district. Maintenance workers had been called because water was leaking from the unit into the apartment below. When they entered using the building manager's key, they found 42-year-old Marcus Brennan face down on his marble kitchen floor, his skin a disturbing shade of bluish-gray, foam dried around his mouth. He'd been dead for at least 36 hours. But what shocked investigators even more than the body was what they found when they started digging into Marcus's life. Every single asset he owned, bank accounts totaling over $3.2 million, investment portfolios, cryptocurrency holdings, real estate deeds, had been systematically transferred out of his name in the 72 hours before his death. And the woman he'd just gotten engaged to 3 weeks earlier had vanished without a trace. This is Secret Witness, True Crime Stories, and today we're covering one of the most calculating disappearances in recent true crime history. A case where love, greed, and murder collided, and the killer got away completely. Marcus Brennan wasn't just wealthy, he was self-made wealthy, which made what happened to him even more tragic. Born in Seattle in 1981, Marcus had grown up middle class, put himself through college, and built a career as a software architect specializing in financial security systems. By his late 30s, he was making over $700,000 a year working as a consultant for international banks and tech companies. He owned properties in Seattle, Miami, and had recently purchased that Istanbul penthouse as an investment property. He had stock portfolios, cryptocurrency holdings, and a lifestyle that reflected his success. First-class travel, designer clothes, expensive watches. But despite all the money, friends described Marcus as surprisingly down-to-earth, generous, and genuinely kind. He wasn't flashy. He didn't need to prove anything to anyone. He just worked hard, made smart investments, and enjoyed his life. Marcus had been single for most of his adult life, focusing on his career, traveling for work, never really settling down anywhere long enough to build a serious relationship. His family worried he'd never find someone. His friends joked that he was married to his job. But in 2019, during a work trip to London, Marcus met someone who would change everything. Her name was Natalia Volkov, 34, stunning in that effortless Eastern European way, tall, blonde, sharp cheekbones, green eyes that seemed to see right through you. She claimed she was a marketing consultant originally from Ukraine but based in London, working with luxury brands across Europe. They met at a hotel bar where Marcus was staying during a 3-week consulting project. Natalia was having a drink alone, reading a book. Marcus, feeling unusually bold, approached her. They talked for 4 hours that first night. Natalia was intelligent, well-traveled, charming, and she seemed genuinely interested in Marcus. Not his money, not his status, just him. She asked about his work, his passions, what made him happy. Marcus was captivated. Before he left London, they'd exchanged numbers and promised to stay in touch. And they did. For the next 4 years, Marcus and Natalia maintained what started as a long-distance friendship that slowly evolved into a relationship. They'd meet up whenever Marcus had work in Europe, which was frequent enough to keep things exciting but distant enough that the relationship never felt suffocating. Natalia would fly to meet him in Paris, Barcelona, Rome, Athens. They took trips together, stayed in beautiful hotels, had what Marcus described to friends as the most romantic relationship of my life. Marcus was ready to take things to the next level. He'd been with Natalia for 4 years, trusted her completely, and genuinely believed she was the one. In September, Marcus planned an elaborate proposal. He invited Natalia to meet him in Istanbul, where he'd recently purchased the penthouse. He told her he wanted to show her the property, spend time exploring the city together, and maybe discuss their future. Natalia flew in from London on September 28th, and Marcus proposed to her on October 2, 2023, at sunset on the rooftop terrace of his penthouse with a view of the Bosphorus. He'd hired a photographer, had roses and champagne waiting, and presented her with a custom-designed engagement ring worth $45,000. Natalia said yes, crying what appeared to be tears of joy, kissing Marcus, telling him she'd never been so happy in her life. That night, after celebrating with an expensive dinner at one of Istanbul's most exclusive restaurants, Marcus did something he'd never done before in their relationship. He opened up completely about his finances. He told Natalia the full scope of his wealth. The bank accounts, the investments, the properties, the cryptocurrency portfolio he'd been building since 2016 that was now worth over $800,000. He explained that he wanted her to know everything because they were going to be married, and he believed in complete transparency with his future wife. He showed her documents, account statements, gave her access to his financial planning software. Marcus later told a friend over the phone that Natalia had seemed overwhelmed but grateful that he trusted her so much. But Natalia wasn't who she claimed to be. She wasn't a marketing consultant. She wasn't even from Ukraine. And her real name wasn't Natalia Volkov. Investigators would later discover that Natalia was likely part of an organized criminal network specializing in romance scams, identity theft, and financial fraud targeting wealthy Western men. Her entire relationship with Marcus had been a con from day one, a 4-year setup designed to get close enough to a high-value target to drain him completely. And the proposal in Turkey gave her the perfect opportunity. In the 2 weeks following the engagement, October 2nd to October 17th, Natalia stayed with Marcus in the Istanbul penthouse. To Marcus, these were the happiest 2 weeks of his life. They explored the city together, talked about wedding plans, looked at venues, discussed where they'd live after getting married. Marcus was already imagining their future. Kids, maybe a home base in Europe, traveling together for work. He was in love, completely, blindly in love. But while Marcus was planning their future, Natalia was planning something else. During those 2 weeks, Natalia began carefully extracting information from Marcus. She asked innocent-sounding questions about his accounts, which banks he used, how he managed his cryptocurrency, whether he had a financial advisor. Marcus, trusting her completely, answered everything. She also started suggesting they consolidate some of their finances, saying things like, "Since we're getting married, maybe we should have a joint account for wedding expenses?" Marcus thought this was reasonable and added Natalia as an authorized user on one of his personal accounts. That was the first mistake. The second mistake was giving her his laptop password when she asked to use his computer to check her email one morning. Marcus had no reason to suspect anything. She was his fiancée. Why wouldn't he trust her? Around October 15th, just 13 days after the engagement, something shifted in Natalia's behavior. Marcus noticed she'd become distant, distracted, spending a lot of time on her phone. When he asked if everything was okay, she told him she was stressed and some client crisis that needed her attention. Marcus believed and gave her space. What he didn't know was that Natalia was in the final stages of planning something really dangerous and her disappearance. She'd been researching untraceable poisons, studying cryptocurrency laundering techniques, and communicating with unknown associates about the logistics of transferring millions of dollars without detection. On October 18th, something happened that may have accelerated Natalia's timeline. Marcus had a video call meeting with his consulting firm, and one of his female colleagues, a woman named Rebecca Chin who Marcus had worked with for years, was on the call. It was a routine business meeting, nothing unusual. But Natalia, who was in the apartment during the call, noticed the way Rebecca smiled at Marcus, the easy rapport they had, the inside jokes. After the meeting ended, Natalia asked Marcus about Rebecca. "How long have you worked with her? Are you close? She seems very comfortable with you." Marcus, oblivious to the jealousy creeping into Natalia's voice, laughed it off. "Rebecca? We've been on projects together for like 6 years. She's great at her job." "Why?" Natalia said it was nothing, just curious, but according to messages investigators later found on a burner phone Natalia had left behind, she became convinced that Marcus was having or planning to have an affair with Rebecca. In reality, there was no affair. Rebecca was a colleague, nothing more. But in Natalia's mind, whether genuinely jealous or using it as justification for what she was about to do, Marcus had betrayed her. And that sealed his fate. Over the next few days, October 18th to October 21st, Natalia put her plan into motion with chilling efficiency. First, using the laptop access Marcus had given her, she logged into his financial accounts. She'd already memorized or photographed his passwords when she'd used his computer earlier in their stay. She systematically began transferring money. Small amounts at first, $10,000 here, $20,000 there. Moving funds from his primary checking account into the joint account she'd convinced him to open. Then she started hitting the larger accounts. On October 20th, she transferred $1.2 million from one of Marcus's investment accounts into a series of shell accounts she'd set up using fake identities. On October 21st, she accessed his cryptocurrency wallets. Marcus had been an early Bitcoin and Ethereum investor and had holdings worth approximately $800,000. Natalia transferred everything into an untraceable cryptocurrency mixing service that essentially laundered the funds through hundreds of transactions, making it impossible to follow. By the morning of October 22nd, Marcus's net worth of over $3.2 million had been reduced to nearly zero, and he had no idea. Marcus woke up on October 22nd, a Monday morning, feeling slightly off. He had a headache, his stomach was upset, and he felt weak. He assumed he was coming down with something, maybe food or wine from dinner the night before. Natalia was already awake, making breakfast in the kitchen. She brought him tea and toast, told him to rest, said she'd take care of him. Marcus, grateful and still weak, ate the toast and drank the tea. What he didn't know was that Natalia had laced both with ricin, a deadly poison extracted from castor beans that causes organ failure and is notoriously difficult to detect in autopsies unless specifically tested for. Ricin poisoning doesn't kill immediately. It takes 24 to 48 hours, during which the victim experiences increasingly severe symptoms: vomiting, diarrhea, seizures, organ shutdown. Natalia had researched this carefully. She knew the timeline. She knew she'd have time to finish her escape before Marcus's body was found. Around noon on October 22nd, while Marcus was resting in bed, visibly deteriorating, Natalia told him she needed to run some errands, pick up wedding planning materials, meet with a potential venue coordinator. Marcus, too sick to question it, told her to go ahead. Natalia kissed him on the forehead, told him she loved him, and walked out of the penthouse. She never came back. She went directly to Istanbul Ataturk Airport, using a passport under a different name that investigators later confirmed was extremely sophisticated, possibly government-quality forgery. She boarded a flight to Dubai, and from there she vanished. Her trail went completely cold. No more credit card transactions, no more phone records, no border crossings under any of her known aliases. She disappeared into thin air, taking Marcus's entire life savings with her. Back in the penthouse, Marcus's condition worsened rapidly throughout the day and night. He tried calling Natalia multiple times. Her phone went straight to voicemail. He tried texting, no response. By Tuesday morning, Marcus was barely conscious, convulsing, bleeding internally. At some point, he tried to crawl toward his phone to call for help, but he collapsed in the kitchen and died there, alone, poisoned by the woman he'd planned to marry. The water leak that led to his body being discovered 2 days later was caused by a faucet Natalia had deliberately left running in the bathroom. Whether as a final act of cruelty or simply carelessness, no one knows. When Turkish police began investigating Marcus's death, they initially suspected natural causes or perhaps a drug overdose. But when they contacted Marcus's family in Seattle and his employer, and people started asking about Natalia and why she wasn't there, the case took a darker turn. Marcus's bank immediately flagged the suspicious transactions from his accounts. His family discovered his investment accounts had been emptied. His cryptocurrency wallets were drained. Everything pointed to Natalia. Interpol issued a red notice, an international arrest warrant, for Natalia Volkov, but the problem was Natalia Volkov didn't exist. The passport she'd used to enter Turkey was a forgery. The address she'd given Marcus in London was fake. Her phone number was registered to a burner. Even the photos Marcus had of her were professionally shot images that could have been purchased or stolen from modeling portfolios. Every aspect of her identity was constructed, and she'd been careful enough to leave no real trail. Forensic accountants traced the stolen money as far as they could. The $1.2 million transferred to shell accounts had been moved through so many international banks and offshore entities that it became impossible to track beyond a certain point. The cryptocurrency was even worse. Once it hit the mixing service Natalia used, it was essentially gone, scattered into thousands of microtransactions across the blockchain, untraceable to any final destination. Investigators estimated that Natalia, or whoever she really was, had successfully stolen and laundered over $3 million from Marcus Brennan, and there was virtually no way to recover it. The autopsy eventually confirmed ricin poisoning after toxicologists specifically tested for it based on the suspicious circumstances. But without a suspect in custody, without knowing who Natalia really was or where she'd gone, there was no one to charge. The case remains officially open but unsolved. Turkish authorities, Interpol, and FBI investigators have all pursued leads, sightings of women matching Natalia's description in various countries, financial transactions that might be connected, but nothing concrete has emerged. It's believed she's either living under yet another false identity somewhere in Eastern Europe, South America, or Southeast Asia, or she's been absorbed back into whatever criminal organization she was working for. Marcus's family was destroyed by what happened. His parents, both in their 70s, had to deal with not only the loss of their son but the financial devastation he'd suffered. Because Marcus had given Natalia authorized access to some accounts and had engaged in the joint account setup willingly, his bank's fraud protections didn't fully apply. His estate recovered a small portion of the stolen money, maybe $200,000 total, but the rest was gone forever. His properties had to be sold to cover debts and legal fees. His retirement accounts, his life's work, everything he'd built, vanished because he'd fallen in love with a ghost. Rebecca Chin, the colleague Natalia had been jealous of, gave a statement to investigators saying she'd only ever had a professional relationship with Marcus and was devastated to learn that a misperception might have contributed to his death. She said, "Marcus was one of the kindest, most genuine people I ever worked with. The fact that someone could manipulate him like this, steal from him, kill him, and just disappear is beyond comprehension. I hope whoever did this is found and brought to justice, but I'm not holding my breath." Where are you watching from? Drop your location in the comments because this case shows that dangerous people can be anywhere, looking for their next victim. The tragic irony of this case is that Marcus spent his entire career building financial security systems designed to prevent exactly the kind of fraud that was used against him. He understood cybersecurity, understood financial crime, understood the tactics criminals use. But when it came to his personal life, when it came to love, he was as vulnerable as anyone. Natalia exploited that vulnerability perfectly. She spent 4 years building trust, playing the long game, making Marcus believe she loved him for who he was, not what he had. And the moment he revealed the full extent of his wealth, she began planning how to take it all and disappear. Some criminologists who've studied the case believe Natalia was part of a larger organized crime network, possibly Russian or Ukrainian-based, that specializes in these kinds of long-term romance scams. The level of sophistication, the forged documents, the money laundering infrastructure, the ability to disappear so completely, suggests she wasn't working alone. There may have been a team supporting her, handling the logistics, preparing her escape route. If that's true, Marcus was never just dating a woman. He was being hunted by an entire criminal operation and he never stood a chance. Others think Natalia might have genuinely developed some feelings for Marcus during those 4 years but ultimately chose greed over love when faced with the opportunity to steal millions. The jealousy over Rebecca could have been real, a twisted combination of genuine attachment and sociopathic entitlement that made her feel justified in killing him. We'll likely never know because we'll likely never find her. What makes this case even more frustrating is how preventable it could have been. If Marcus had done a basic background check on Natalia before getting engaged, if he'd verified her identity through official channels, if he'd been more cautious about sharing financial information, if he'd noticed the red flags, 4 years of dating and she never invited him to meet her family, never showed him where she really lived, always met him in neutral cities. But hindsight is cruel. Marcus was in love. He trusted her. And she exploited that trust in the most horrific way possible. The case also raises serious questions about how easy it is to disappear in the modern world if you have resources and planning. Natalia walked through international airports, crossed borders, moved millions of dollars and evaporated without a trace. Despite all our surveillance technology, despite Interpol and international cooperation, one person with a plan and the right tools can vanish completely. And somewhere in the world right now, she's likely living comfortably on the money she stole from a man who loved her, never facing consequences, maybe even planning her next victim. Before we wrap up, I want to hear from you. Do you think Natalia will ever be caught? Do you believe she acted alone, or was this part of a bigger operation? And what can people do to protect themselves from romance scams like this? Drop your thoughts in the comments below, and let me know what case you'd like me to cover next. This case has no justice, no trial, no conviction, no closure for Marcus's family. Just an unsolved murder, millions of dollars gone, and a killer who got away with everything. It's a reminder that sometimes the bad guys win. Sometimes evil escapes unpunished. And sometimes the only thing we can do is tell the story and hope that someone somewhere is listening and learns from what happened. If you haven't already, subscribe and turn on notifications. Every day we tell stories of survival, justice, and the strength of people who refuse to be victims. This has been Secret Witness, True Crime Stories, where we uncover hidden truths and honor those who refuse to become victims.